Hey, Westside. So I'm waiting on Jaren. And it's weird size because I had another video. Hold on, I think I can do this. No. Oh, there we go. That's better. Yeah, if you watch a video in the window and like make the picture larger, any live stream you have coming up, it'll be large. It'll be at that format. So until it starts or until you change something else. It's weird. So I got the stuff for Magigoo. Got the alcohol and glue, and I mixed up a batch of it. 32 ounces, which it's somewhat viscous, but like you apply it to your surface plate with like a bingo dauber. I ordered two empty bingo daubers so I can use those for to apply it. So it's like that thin. It's like a really thin coating, and that'll last like 5 or 6. I don't know how many prints until you wash it off. Then you apply it again. And I asked in the forums how long will 32 ounces last, and they're like years. So I'm good for a while. So yeah, and it's supposed to be really really good stuff. I'm having trouble with PLA sticking, so I'm gonna try it with PLA when I get the daubers and see if it helps. So hey RT96. So yeah, we're just waiting on Jaren. So this is Lucas from Sea Lion Prime and Globe Gangster. He owns the Globe Gangster Discord that I'm a member of. I'm subscribed to. I don't know if that are you you're not a member of it because you don't pay a membership. I guess you'd be a member of the thing. I actually have what is it, Boost or whatever it's called. So I get I can upload like larger videos to Discord without them having to be under like 25 megabytes or something. It's I mean it's worth $9 a month just for that. So I can upload videos I've made instead of just ones that instead of just putting a link. So anyway, we're just waiting on Jaren, like I said, and then once he comes on, he's like 6 minutes late, and once he comes on, he's gonna have like a 20-minute fucking intro. He really needs to shorten that thing. Oh, and I got the new motor and screw for the resin printer, so it'll be fixed correctly. I got the wrong thing, so that's gonna get fixed. I want to get back into resin printing. I want to start with a new vat, uh, a new screen protector. Be really careful with dust and stuff. It's hard to put screen protectors on. I always get a piece of dust under it, and I do it exactly like they show. Need to take it to was it an iPhone store or whatever, and have them do it like they do the iPhones. They put it in like this holder, and they have this thing where they just pull out a sheet and then squeegee it on. Yeah, I need a clean room. I've got a static wristband. I might wear that. It's one with the wire that clips onto on the ground, so it grounds you out. That's kind of what I need. Or I could just not use a screen protector. I mean, that's an option. If I'm really careful not to puncture the vat. NASA spec, yeah, that'd be nice. But yeah, I want to get back into resin printing because I can do a lot more detail work with that. Start printing larger busts, like mantle size, because I've got a pretty good collection of have you? I've got a pretty good collection of models from fucking Punisher, the Invincible, and Ultraman. I think I'm getting Wolverine. I haven't downloaded anything from him for a while from the what's it called, Patreon. But yeah, they do quality work. There's some big pig fucker oink. It's pretty funny. Does game miniature pieces. Oh, right on. Yeah, I mean that's where the money is if you've got the market for it. Is just hey Lisa, is printed miniatures that other people can paint. Print a whole army. You can make some pretty good cheese. I don't really want to paint them. I just want to make them. I suck at painting. I've tried, and it's like these guys on YouTube airbrushing where they're making this really fine whisker thick line. You know, just I mean beautiful work. Like with a stencil, just kissing the edge of it to give a real light, shadow. If I can get mine out there, it's like looks like I might as well have taken a fucking handful of magic markers and just scribbled on the paper. Just like, and not the small ones, not this size. I'm talking about the ones that they use at the grocery store to paint the numbers on the windows. Those big wide ones. It's like I just have no fucking control. And it probably doesn't hurt to use like a $500 airbrush. That probably helps a little bit. But I mean, I've got a fucking air compressor, a good pancake air compressor I use. So airflow isn't a problem. And I'm using a Pache airbrush. I mean, Pache's a pretty decent company. They've been around for decades, like at least since the 80s. Oh yeah, with a paintbrush, that real long fucking flexible paintbrush. Yeah, those guys are amazing. And it just straight line. I mean, I don't know how you do it. And then they just move their hand and the paintbrush sort of, it's like a combination between their hand motion and the viscosity of the paint and the resistance of the paint on the brush. It's pretty amazing shit. I like watching them. I've done like tape pinstripe, but yeah, that's nothing. Come on, Jaron, where the hell are you? No word from Jaron. Wait here, 4:56. Everybody is arriving. We'll be just a few minutes late. Okay. 13 minutes, man. So I'm not printing anything right now because I want to wait till I have I just tried to print something and it was with the new PLA or the new ABS I got, and it lifted up a little bit. So I want to start from there. I want to flip the plate over because I know one side's clean. I put the thing through the dishwasher and then hand scrubbed it, so I know it's clean. And then I want to try the homemade Magic Goo, see if that works, and just see how good it is. And it's supposed to be fucking great. I mean, I haven't heard anything. I have heard no bad comments about Magic Goo, none. So, and they've got like 5 or 6 different kinds too, different formulations that work with different materials. One thing I'm kind of excited about is with the multi-material, the MMS, the multi-material system, is not only you can use different colors, you can use different materials too. You can use like ABS and PETG. I think that's the combination. Like you, ABS does not want to stick to PETG, but PETG. Am I pretty low? Do I have the mic? Oh, I had my mic turned down. Is that better? I think ABS or something doesn't want to stick to PETG. So you use the PETG as support material and then you print with the ABS. So you're using something that, after the build plate that the thing can't stick to. So you don't have to peel the supports off. They'll just fall away. So, hey, Real Cygnus. Come on, Jaron. Which it gets it. Paid $1.99 to ask, can abstractions have physical properties? Okay. He's still doesn't understand space time. He probably still thinks space time is space and time. So, Whitson ain't too smart. Yeah, I've got a volume knob on for my microphone on my headset, so I can like turn it down and It's muted basically. And it mutes automatically when I flip my headset up, which is really nice for like playing games. Hey, Martin, like if you're doing VoIP and you don't want somebody to hear you, just flip it up. You don't have to hit a button or anything. And check their volume. I can't check their volume. Why can't I check its volume? It's really weird. YouTube's fucked up. I really like to go to like Twitch, or if I could get 1,000 followers or followers. I don't know. I'd like to do live streaming on TikTok. Was it supposed to be Ruhif? Space Audits and Shane St. Pierre. What a couple of idiots. Yeah, I've got a Twitch. I got a Twitch account. I should. It is the didn't have the link tree. Supposed to have a link tree link. I got a link tree account to where I can link all the stuff and then just post the link to it, and you can. It's pretty popular, but I don't know why it didn't put it in there. Huh? I'll have to fix that. Yeah, I'm on Twitch. I've got a TikTok account, Instagram, bunch of different ones. No grinder. Don't have a grinder account. Telegram. Isn't that the one where it deletes your email right after you read it or something like that? Yeah, I don't like talking to people, so come on, Jaron. Jesus. You're beyond late. You're tardy. Austin Fave. Yeah, I bet. Doesn't want a paper trail for anything he said. See what? Okay. I want to clarify something. When Flatzoid said kids' brains are still developing at age 20, I wouldn't talk about like the prefrontal cortex. Hey, Steve, I was talking about like I was thinking he was meaning like shake some keys at a 19-year-old and they'll be like, that's what I meant. Their brains are developed enough to understand shit, even though they don't make good decisions. So that's all I was saying. But I mean, we trust them enough to we trust the development of their brains enough to allow them to vote and drive. So I can't even remember what the context of the comment was. Damn. Alan of Space Audits looks like a First Amendment auditor that keeps getting fucking busted. Is that him? Is he a fucking First Amendment auditor as well? Because I mean, he's the spitting image of another one. I don't know. Yeah, not too surprised. All right, buddy, come on. Where are you, Jaren? I've run out of shit to say, so yep, that's about it, RT. That would be a very close approximation, unless they stick with the state's curriculum. Then they're just basically hypocrites because they have to teach the exact opposite of what they believe in. So, but it's all gaslighting. It's gaslighting your children. Because in the cases where they have to teach them, I've heard some of them say, well, I tell my kids, this is what school teaches you, but this is real. This is what's real. So, this is what you have to know to pass your tests, but this is what's real. And that's fucking disgusting. That's despicable. Who's the most famous flat earther? Probably Eric DeBay, because that's who all of them follow. Yeah, I mean it's just fucking with your kids' heads. Eric DeBay, Mark Sargent, he's another one. He's one of the old school dumbasses. I'd say those two probably the most. Hey Taker, probably the most famous. Yeah, Mark Sargent's a media whore. He's an attention whore for sure. And he's a fucking grifter, con man. Doesn't care who he lies to, just as long as he makes that money. Yeah, true, Lisa. Reading their comment section is hilarious. Here, there you go. Enjoy. People are idiots. Mid 70s, no human. Man, that is a nice night. Yeah, yeah. Rain in Oregon? What? No way. There we go. Is it muted? No. There, turn it up all the way. Well, might as well have some sound. Yes, he is, West Side. I think we'll just pause it for a little bit. Yeah, he is a shit person. But it's all fake, and I'm exposing it. Jesus.
Astronauts to the moon. Ignition sequence start.
See, you only need one fucking intro, man.
Houston, we have a problem.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue.
What you're seeing here is a mirage.
Are you ready? Debate fans, are you ready? For the handful in attendance and the thousands watching across the world, brought to you tonight by Jeranism, the #1 YouTube channel in all of existence. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to
I am too brilliant a man, too perfect in every single metric, too big, too strong, too smart. I can fight too well. I'm caramel. I'm beautiful. It would be a shame for me to not service these females. I am a gift to females created by the one above. I am too...
Socialism, communism, talk about capitalism, atheism, globalism, what about creationism? It don't matter what the ism, live on debateism.
Welcome everybody to Debateism X. I know it's been a while. It's been way too long. I think it's been months, literally 3 months since we've done the show. So we're here. Welcome back. We are going to be having a barn burner tonight. Well, if we get the intro to not play twice. There we go. We've got Debateism X, episode number X12. We've got Shane St. Pierre and Alan from Space Audits going against Peter the Globe Gangster. That is gangster. And Lucas Sea Lion Prime. And they are all here. Let's check in with them. Say hello to the guys. We've got first up, let's say hello to Peter. Peter, welcome to the show. Tell everybody who you are.
Guys. Hello, hi. Good to be here. I'm Peter. I represent a community known as Globe Gangsters on Discord. And I will be defending the general theory of relativity together with Sea Lion Prime.
Beautiful. And speaking of him, Sea Lion Prime, below you there. Hello, sir.
Hello, Sea Lion Prime, also known as Mordwand. I'm here representing all sea lions across the world, but especially those that will be witness to the final experiment in Antarctica.
Yes, those sea lions. And we've got myself, Jaren from Jeranism. I'll be moderating, completely down the middle as always. And we've got Alan on this side over here. Alan, welcome to the show. Welcome back.
Hola, senor.
¿Cómo estás? That's all I know.
Nice. Yeah, I'm representing Ether Cosmology. I'll be taking the position that the ether is the positive position and arguing against relativity.
Beautiful. And we've got your partner, Shane St. Pierre, in the house. Shane, what's up?
What's up, Jaren? Welcome. Good to be back, everyone, man.
Thank you.
Good to see our opponents here. Hopefully we'll have a delightful, informative, and educational discussion for everyone.
I'm sure we will. And I believe that you guys already flipped or decided who's going to go first. And Sea Lion Prime and the gangsters are going first, correct? And we're going to do 5-minute intros for each person. So who's going to go first out of you two?
I will. So let me share my screen.
Sure.
You guys let me know if that works.
Yeah, I'll probably just see here if we get that one to work.
Yep.
Yeah, hold on. I got to move something a little bit differently here. It's a little out of whack. And we'll fix that. All right, we see it good enough for you to start, and I'll kind of fix it as you go along. But go ahead.
All right. Hello. We're going to tell you about the amazing insights from the general theory of relativity. We represent Globe Gangsters, but today we'll try to build some bridges with our ether cosmology community. So I will present our position. All right. Our position is that the true ether cosmology was established by the famous experiments of the late 19th century, which led to its current description via the general theory of relativity. That's our position, and we will defend it all the way. The true nature of ether since 1920s is ether is a metaphysical background that acts as a medium or substrate for matter and electromagnetic phenomena. It is a four-dimensional substrate whose states cannot be ordered by time alone. We cannot observe simultaneous states at different locations in the ether. Its structure is influenced by the presence of matter, and radiation, and movement of matter and radiation occurs within or over ether, and it's affected by its local shape. A renowned 21st century ether cosmologist summarized this as follows. Ether is an immaterial background medium of pure potential. It cannot be quantified or measured intrinsically. What we know about ether when no matter is present or locally is that it has these properties shown on the screen. When we observe ether behavior, we conclude that relative motion is rotation of ether. For all observers, ether rotates, and they all observe time dilation and length contraction in the relatively moving frame. The objects themselves do not shrink in any of the frames. It's the function of the ether rotation that causes the perceived length contraction and time dilation. We do observe this in nature. For example, a lot of muons get produced in the atmosphere, around 1 million of them, let's say, per area. We observe 49,000 of them reaching the Earth. This is impossible due to the extremely short lifetime of a muon. The only way we can explain it by explaining it via time dilation and length contraction. Here's the result of such a measurement, where we observe 49,000 muons out of million reaching the ground. From the point of view of a muon, what happens here is that the length, the distance, shortens from 10 to 2 kilometers. But from a point of view of the observer on the Earth, it is the time as perceived at the moving muon that lengthens. This is the only explanation of that observable phenomenon in nature. When matter is present, ether is described as follows. On the left, we see the distribution, the shape of the ether, which influences the motion of matter and radiation. On the right, we see the distribution of matter in a given location. This is what we know about ether today. This can be easily measured, even by amateurs. This dad left a few atomic clocks at home, synchronized them with a few more atomic clocks, and took them on a mountain. Because he was in a different location of ether, those clocks ran differently, and he was able to measure them. In laboratory settings, we can measure time dilation, the difference in elapsed time, between atomic clocks at distances as short as 1 meter or 3 feet. Light propagation is also distorted by local shape of ether. On the left, you see an observed galaxy, the blue ring, and the light originating from that galaxy is deformed by the ether's shape surrounding the yellow glowing object. On the right, you see a chart showing how many papers confirming this effect in astronomy have been published in recent years. Furthermore, we know that ether can wave itself as a medium. When dramatic cosmic events occur, they can affect the shape of the ether, and that disruption propagates through space. We have devices such as LIGO that have successfully measured such waves in ether many times. I conclude by saying that general relativity is an empirically verified description of the true ether cosmology, and I yield the remainder of my time to my good friend Sea Lion Prime.
All right, Sea Lion, go ahead. You got 5 minutes and 5 seconds.
Peter, you'll need to stop sharing so that I can share. Okay. Go. Okay.
Carol,
are you able to see my screen?
Yep.
Excellent. So I will be building off of the affirmative statement that Peter has made, that the theory of general relativity as it stands and its encapsulation of special relativity fully is describable within this notion of ether. We will then build off of the specific experiments in the late 19th century and early 20th century that confirm that effect. and discuss the role of those experiments in furthering our understanding of the ether as it exists. What's beautiful about this topic is that we often get to see in physics
Hey, George.
this phenomenon of the macro scale translating to the micro scale. And what you're seeing here from a video from Veritaserum is an illustration of a wave interference pattern of constructive and destructive interference. That pattern is created by any sort of mass waves or light waves, which are propagating, and leads to the ability to perform interferometric studies on things like phase shift. The first sort of experiments that we had related to this notion of the ether came in the mid to late 19th century. Earlier than that, we had the theory of Fresnel, which described some of the properties of what he thought might be a situation of an ether. The theories of Newton, which established this idea of what an ether might be. But all of these sort of had the idea that ether would have to be absolute in some sense relative to the Earth. Airy's experiment was very interesting because it provided a direct measurement, as shown on the left with a normal telescope versus a water-filled telescope. And through an inability to measure an expected deflection, demonstrated for the first time that there might not be that absolute frame of ether that we were looking for. Now, this was the basis in later experiments for the beautiful device of Michelson and Morley. This is one of the greatest experiments ever conducted in the history of physics, where a block was suspended on an annular ring of mercury. The interferometric pattern would then be entrained through the ether if it formed a medium that was absolute and stationary relative to the Earth, and that ability to measure the resulting effect on the interferometry, those wave patterns that we talked about, would then form a test of whether that absolute frame existed. Now, what did we find in this experiment? As was confirmed many times in later experiments, particularly in 1926 with a different interferometer at a smaller scale, that absolute nature of the ether as we thought of it was not what we observed. So how did this influence Einstein? Well, you may have heard this classic quote, "While I was thinking of this problem in my student years, I came to know the strange result of Michelson's experiment. Soon I came to the conclusion that our idea about the motion of the Earth with respect to the ether is incorrect. If we admit Michelson's
I have no idea, Steve. Hey, binge thinker. I'm kind of confused.
result as a fact, this was the first path that led me to the special theory of relativity, among other things. And I thank our Aether Cosmology friends for bringing this beautiful quote of Einstein to our attention. Now, refinements to the theory wanted to test essentially what were the other kind of things we could detect about the ether. And Sagnac, in particular, had a sort of different interpretation of the ether relative to Einstein. But he had this idea of a rotating loop interferometer and wanted to test if by rotating it through an assumed stationary ether medium, you would observe a phase shift in the light. And indeed, that phase shift was observed. However, what has been confirmed countless times since then and shortly thereafter was that such an effect was entirely explainable within the framework of special relativity and actually provides strong evidence for the isotropic nature of light. At the summit of Mount Wilson, Dayton Miller provided further evidence for the nature of the ether, measuring very precisely the unexpected ether drift, which would be sort of altitude and location dependent. Now, initially, this was very difficult to explain. However, as we'll show later on in open discussion, and we can provide papers to this effect, we now know in a relativistic sense how we can describe the ether on the basis of this experiment. And then we come to sort of the last great classical interferometer, I call it, which is the work of Michelson, Gale, and Pearson. And this was, again, a measurement of the assumption of a stationary ether relative to the Earth's rotation. Again, anytime we would entrain the light through a stationary ether, the expectation under the theory of Fresnel was that there would be a resultant drag affecting a phase shift. This basically allowed us to confirm that no such stationary ether exists and also provided extremely strong evidence for the theory of relativity as it exists. Now, Einstein wasn't divorced from all of these experiments, and in a letter to Lorentz, he famously stated this equation, and this relates directly to our characterization of ether in the prior construction, that the structure of the... Okay, yeah, we'll stop there.
Okay. Whoever's going first, Alan or Shane, you have 5
I got
minutes.
it. Yep, but we I don't think we need to screen share or anything, so we'll be fine. We're just gonna speak, I think.
Okay.
So I'll do a little bit of a contextualization for the open, a little bit of the meta. Essentially, right, even though our components have combined space-time and relativity into their wonderful position as ether cosmologists, we welcome them. But only those who don't understand relativity actually believe in it in any capacity. Only by surrendering your understanding to other men can you actually stand upon the pit of sand and pretend it to be a solid foundation. And in the words of Nikola Tesla, right, and when he described relativity, he said,
Hey, Martin.
Einstein's relativity work is a magnificent mathematical garb which fascinates, dazzles, and makes people blind to the underlying errors. The theory is like a beggar clothed in purple whom ignorant people take for a king. Its exponents are brilliant men, but they are metaphysicists rather than scientists, right? So its relativity theory has been around for over a century, and to this day, the acolytes in support of the theory have actually surrendered their faculties to equations and concepts that even they don't fully understand or even care to understand in most cases. The people depend on the understanding of others with a severe appeal to majority and to authority so completely that it's almost a form of surrender. Those who don't understand it actually cannot see how absurd it is. The classical proofs of relativity are often cited to hand-wave dismiss any criticisms, but each one of those gets actually destroyed when you look into the details. We'll address many of those tonight. Another quote from our boy Thomas Dennis says, "It's impossible to teach special relativity without deceiving the student." That's from Science and Philosophy 10, number 2, 2022, pages 146 to 67. And when you get down to the so-called proofs, right, including the perihelion precession of Mercury, the gravitational redshift, the alleged detection of gravitational waves at LIGO through embedded and nested neural network and noise data, which gets elevated through a series of filters, which actually get designed to produce the data they're looking for, are actually nothing more than mathematical tricks and misrepresentations of data. Right? In all cases, the predictions.
So LIGO is a mathematical trick.
And are actually post-dictions, disguised as predictions, straight up copied, or completely fraudulent. When you get the concept of space-time as a physical entity, it's purely imaginary. It cannot possibly have physical qualities. To apply physical qualities to a concept is reification, severely lacks any experimental proof or any sort of backing in science or empiricism. And the use of metric tensors and four-dimensional coordinates doesn't actually change that. It just makes it a mathematical trick, even though the speed of light is constant, right? Which is a primary postulate of special relativity. It's shown basic experiments in ECEI and ECF that this is not the case. And just to wrap it up here, we'll contend that relativity has inverted our understanding of the universe, leading to absurd claims about cosmic distances, timescales, and it's unprovable measurements and frames of reality that will never exist, that no one can ever verify. I advocate that we return to experiment-driven empiricism, and we can only deal with what we can see and deal with and measure. And the lab frame is where all experiments take place, where all measurements exist, the only place where you can take measurements. And I cede my time to Alan.
So you can't measure the Earth because you can't fit the Earth into a lab. Okay.
All right, Alan, whenever you want to start, it's all yours.
Thank you. You see that?
We do.
So I can't measure my house?
All right, cool.
I can't measure how fast my car goes?
In the ether framework, space and time are absolute. All measurements of velocity with respect to the speed of light are measured as c plus or minus v and can be answered in the first order as a ratio of v over c or at a higher order without invoking the gamma factor for space-time symmetry. Relativity theory makes use of covariance to satisfy linear orthogonal transformations to support the principle of the constancy of c. In this manner, a geometrically convenient position is invoked to facilitate a stationary frame relative to some observer moving at a constant velocity. By using covariance, the x-axis and time axis will be changed as a function of the moving observer's velocity squared over c squared. This is called link contraction and time dilation. These effects have no explanatory power over absolute measurements of velocity made by interferometric experiment. In order for link contraction and time dilation to be true, you must first assume an unmeasured velocity to be the cause of the produced second-order effects, which render the observer's ability to measure his velocity using light impossible in his own frame. Absolute time and space can be demonstrated with GPS and interferometry. Here we have Carroll Alley in 1979 proclaiming that relativity exists in GPS, and then 17 years later in a GPS overview, he's begging for it to be implemented, specifically the relativity of simultaneity and the associated Lorentz transformations. In 2000, we have Neil Ashby confirming that GPS uses a Galilean synced time frame for the ECI and ECEF.
Yeah, they can't understand basic anything.
Frame, which is linked to the stars. Events will always occur simultaneously in the ether, regardless of the state of motion for the observers. But most importantly, this framework is based on an absolute fixed lab frame, and the ether will serve as the mechanism that facilitates Galilean velocity transformations in C. For predictions of the physical properties of the ether, they are as follows. There will be an anisotropic effect, a height effect, a space effect, and a hydroaerodynamic effect. The anisotropic effect is that there will be a preferred direction in the speed of light going east and west, and there won't be one going north and south. The height effect will be that there will be a vertical velocity gradient that increases that will increase the preferred direction bias as you increase in altitude. This is substantiated by Miller, Galev, and the Kennedy and Thorndike experiment. The space effect is that there will be a measured periodicity throughout the day and throughout the year that corresponds to the position of the stars and the sun. The hydroaerodynamic effect is that the velocity of electromagnetic waves will be affected by the parameters directed by the directed system, i.e. the tubes and chambers of the interferometer. Conductors or dielectric insulators used as shielding will affect the turbulent and laminar flow of the ether wind in the same respect that it would for any other gas or liquid that experiences flow through a tube. Relativity is based primarily on the principle of relativity of simultaneity. It states that two observers are given an arbitrarily agreed upon defined time for an arbitrary coordinate system, and then in that coordinate system, events that occur simultaneous in one frame will not occur simultaneously for the other frame. Based upon that principle of relativity of simultaneity, two postulates are put forward. Postulate one is that all inertial reference frames are equally valid. An inertial reference frame defined in relativity theory is a frame that's in uniform rectilinear motion at a constant velocity. In relativity theory, there is no preferred frame. Postulate two is the constancy of C is irrespective of the motion of the source or the observer in an inertial frame as defined by the first postulate. The consequences of these postulates leads to observers making measurements that are different for length and time based on the constancy of C relative to the square of their velocity over C squared. The physical mechanism of link contraction and time dilation is ambiguous with no clear explanation, i.e. lattice structure compression, but the fact remains that in order for C to remain a constant in a moving frame, the moving observer must be physically contracted in his frame. Otherwise, C would measure relative to the observer's velocity and not the other way around. To falsify relativity theory will show that its postulates and principles do not hold true in the reality that it claims to have explanatory power over. Starting with the philosophy of relativity of simultaneity, and then in cases of electromagnetic propagation and processes making the wrong prediction for relative motion, it will show that the postulates are false. In the case of the unipolar dynamo paradox, the Sagnac effect in a uniformly rotating frame, and also the linear variant and GPS all require a preferred frame to make the correct prediction. All motion is relative. Relative to what is the question? We'll show that a stationary lab frame makes the correct prediction every time in regards to electromagnetic processes. And the Sagnac effect has never once in the history of relativity ever been derived as a relativistic effect, which we will definitely be going over. That's the end of my time.
Okay, you're all set. Thank you much. All right, and you guys went first, so you guys can start off the conversation. We're going to set both clocks at 45 minutes. Is that what we decided? Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
So set them both at 45, and they're ready to go when you are. We'll fix the screen here in a second, but that's good. So you guys go ahead, Lucas or Peter.
Nicholson Morley?
No, maybe let's start with something more fundamental than that. I think the main difference between our two views is you kept asserting the existence of an absolute reference frame and I think you called it an absolute lab frame. Could you tell us more about where that reference frame is located and where is the absolute lab frame?
Yeah, right here on Earth. We're all
in which location?
Well, how are you making a position if you don't know what a lab frame is, Peter?
one second. Right here on Earth, where all the laws of physics apply and were derived.
Summer school regulars, yeah.
Okay. Are all locations on Earth equally the same absolute reference frame?
Do the laws of physics apply everywhere on Earth?
Yes, but is there an absolute reference frame if Sea Lion and I make a measurement of
You already answered the question. You already answered.
No, I haven't. I have not.
When I asked you where the laws of physics apply and you said everywhere on Earth, that's the answer.
Yes. So it's relative within the Earth, yeah?
You were right to start at the basics, Peter.
So if I am moving away from you, one last question. If I am moving away from you on Earth, am I seeing the velocity of light as constant, or is it slower for me, faster for you? How does that work?
Light will be measured relative to your velocity.
So it's relative. Okay, we agree. On Earth,
every other,
it's relative.
Like every other wave.
So what is the reasoning behind the postulated constancy of C in inertial frames?
Well, that started by Voigt when he was trying to explain Dopplership with the postulate that the speed of light is constant for all inertial frames. He actually came up with the same derivation that that Lorentz used for his theory, and then that was used by Einstein. The equations are actually identical. I'll pull them up here in a second. So it comes from this
That
lad.
doesn't quite answer the question, though. What would be
No, it 1 second. It answered it exactly, right? Because you said, "What's the basis for it?" Right? And it started right here with this guy Voigt on the principles of Doppler, where he was deriving the Doppler shift based on a constancy of C in all frames. This is the original link contraction and time dilation equation.
So what is the consequences of the constancy of the speed of light for the Einstein-Maxwell equations? And why is it important?
That you will experience link contraction and time dilation if you're in the moving frame. And that time and space are not absolute.
So when we speak specifically to the extension of the Maxwell equations within the Einstein-Maxwell theory, what is the effect of the speed of light on the laws of electromagnetism within those frames? That's a simple question. What is the effect of the speed of light within that frame?
When he was giving his presentation, all I heard was
Menaloine, trakta satundi mondo chiwen met alakta liguna, ispeo ben akrasma fero junna, deno ferti hamas met atlutki zid handla, suk. Dopo metimbakta seno voi, kito male ne palela, feno, kiko hamas stato un tro, bam, sono dopo da dindo scala, nella dindo, ugela.
That's all I heard.
I don't understand the question.
Shane, do you understand the question? Okay, so if it were not the case that light were isotropic, and we have two mechanisms to explain an anisotropy in light: a preferred direction and absolute frame, or relativity. Do you agree with that distinction? That those are the two primary ways that we could explain an anisotropic distribution. Okay. What would be the consequences if neither of those were true?
Oh, I got you. So Maxwell derived the speed of light based off magnetic permeability and electric permittivity. And what he was doing, so that gives you the average speed of the speed of light in a vacuum, right? Now, experimentally, they measured that. And then when they get into more precise measurements with interferometry, they notice that the speed is slightly faster and slightly slower, going with and against the east and west directions. That was used to measure quote unquote Earth rotation, but it's measured through the fluctuation of the minimum and maximum dimensions in that speed difference throughout the day, which corresponds to sidereal time when they plot it on a graph. So they equate that to Earth rotation. 1 second. So the consequences are that the speed of light is slightly.
Yeah, the Earth doesn't rotate. It's the ether that moves and gives it the illusion of 15 degrees per hour.
Faster and slightly slower, and it's measured relative to the velocity of the observer. There's no real consequence or anything that's going to break it or whatever, right? Because actually what Einstein proposed to solve Galilean invariance for Maxwell's equations was to use partial differentials for the time coordinates, right? And on the inverse of that, you can use absolute time in a partial differential for the moving frame, but the math is more rigorous, and it's actually, but it leads to first order invariance, because when you do that, there's a leftover velocity component that you can use for the observer, and that was known as the Maxwell-Hertz equations. Now, those were, disregarded in favor of Einstein's theory.
So, but you're not quite answering the question, though, and I'm not sure what you're. Sorry. So
there's no mathematical. There's no consequences, dude. They both use the same. They both use the same. Like the problem was the same. They just solved it slightly differently. One uses absolute time and a differential for the moving frame, and the other one uses two differentials for time. Like the.
But let's cut this out though a little bit, because what I asked was under the assumption that neither of those explained the anisotropy, there would be consequences for the Maxwell equations, and I'm not sure you understand what those consequences would be. Shane, do you have a response to that?
I'm waiting to go back to the lab frame with Peter. So whenever you guys are done.
Well, I just think that this one's important because
the speed of light's never been measured as isotropic, though, right? Like when it comes down to interferometry measurements, the speed varies relative to the latitude, so the consequences aren't as dire as you're making it.
Okay, well, let's dig into that a little bit. So where's
Let's
your
not.
evidence?
Your question has been answered in full. My evidence is all interferometry experiments that measured the speed of light being varied
You've
relative to the
demonstrated that-
latitude.
you've
Maybe we
demonstrated-
can
Yeah,
maybe we
go
can
on.
answer this question in a simpler way, or reset a little bit. So I am a little bit confused. I heard from Alan that there is an absolute lab frame. It is on Earth. We agree. Within the Earth, we can narrow this down to the Earth. Within the Earth, though, and this is where I'm not getting it, maybe Shane can explain, speed of light is constant for two observers or is not? Which is your claim? Our claim is that it is constant. If I am moving away from Sea Lion on Earth on a train, I will not be running.
I think what this is like you said in the beginning, a building of bridges between the relativity community and the ether cosmology community.
Away from light. I
Well-
will still measure the speed of light to be c, or whatever it is in air, and he will measure it as such. And he's not in a better place in Colorado than I am in Washington, where light
All right,
travels
all right.
differently,
Well,
or there's a
let-
select direction in which it tends to travel. Can you explain that? Where is the absolute lab frame? Where is
Well,
it
hold on.
physically located on Earth?
Let's just define lab frame real quick before we get lost in the muck. And you guys took
Lab frame. Where was it? Lab frame. In physics, the laboratory frame of reference, or lab frame for short, is a frame of reference centered on the laboratory in which the experiment, either real or thought experiment, is done. This is the reference frame in which the laboratory is at rest.
3 like running leaps before we started to walk, right? So, lab frame, typically defined as the reference frame where the measuring apparatus or observer is at rest, right? You have to have that in the physics experiments. It's compared and contrasted with usually with the center of mass frame when doing relativity, right? But one requires constant transformations of results back to one, and one does not. Can you guess which one? Absolutely. The lab frame is the only one that doesn't require transformations back to. It's an Earth-based reference, non-inertial frame for the observer at rest. Now, when you're doing relativistic considerations in the lab for experimentation, and you're going to say plain fantasy land, you have to put it into a fantasy coordinate system and a fantasy translation. That's why you have covariant transforms and all that wonderful stuff with the math tricks that get played. So when we're talking about where's the lab frame on Earth, Peter, that's a retarded question.
So
Okay,
when
now-
I'm moving in relation to... Go ahead.
Because there was something that Alan said that I think was really important, and it would play off of what Shane said.
So all labs are located in the exact same place on Earth? Is that what he's saying?
So
all measurements are done in the same exact location? I think that's what he's saying.
You mentioned an issue with measuring the the speed of light is isotropic. Could you describe a little bit more why that's an issue and why that has not been measured in your view?
You mean it varies in east-west direction constantly? How is that constant in isotropic? It's definitely not.
So, but let me think about it this way. So if we're in a particular location, is it possible to measure a one-way speed of light within your lab frame?
Yes, using GPS, those are one-way measurements of the speed of light.
So wait a minute. So the GPS is within your lab frame?
GPS sends
I love the one-way speed of light, guys.
signals one way from the satellite to your receiver. That's measured with a time difference.
In an Earth-centered, right?
So
Earth-centered,
that's a one-way.
It's funny because when I communicate with someone on my ham radio with a satellite as a repeater, they receive the signal just as quick as I receive the signal from them.
Speed.
So your claim is that GPS provides a one-way measurement of the speed of light. Could you support that with research? When has that been measured?
The range measurement equation every time it snapshots
Every
distance,
every
right?
time, every time GPS is used. So
Can you
to
walk us
actually,
through it? Walk us through it step by step.
Oh, that's some circular logic.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
Hold on.
I got you. So check this out, and this will answer Peter's questions too about the speed of light and who can measure it with what, right? So suppose you have a moving train with people on it, and they all have GPS receivers, and suppose there's a stationary lad on a platform with a GPS receiver. At the time where the train intersects with the With the stationary lad, a GPS signal hits the train and the lad that's on the platform. Everybody gets their signals, but there will be a proportional delay to the observers in the moving frame, right? It's just like any other wave. Sonar works the exact same way, and it uses the same range measurement equation.
So what is the range measurement equation? What is the distinction between range and pseudo range for GPS?
The range measurement equation tells you the distance based off, well, it sends a snapshot of the time of when the satellite, where its location was in coordinates, and then you get the difference of when it was received times the speed of light.
Something like R sub r, T sub r minus R sub s, T sub s equals what? C times T of r minus T of s, which is the actual range measurement equation in ECI, right?
So you have a precise one-way speed of light measurement from GPS to any location on the Earth?
Why do you think a lab frame is location dependent, dude?
Anywhere that you get the GPS signal, yeah.
Okay. So there will be no variance in GPS signal as a function of distance?
No, there's explicitly a timing delay based on your velocity. That's how GPS measures your position accurately without having to make further adjustments.
And what do you mean by further adjustments?
So if the speed of light was isotropic and constant for someone moving at a constant velocity, the timing difference wouldn't work out for them, right?
So let me walk through this a little bit. So you have a GPS satellite, right? And we don't necessarily know, what it is. Let's just say for the sake of argument, it's up there somewhere, right? So it's sending a signal down. Your claim is that's going to be a one-way signal, and we can use that to measure the one-way speed of light. What I'm asking you, first of all, I'd like to see the paper to support that. I'm not seeing that yet, so if you could provide that, that'd be great. I'm pretty sure I know which one you're talking about, but I'd love to talk through the details. But what I'm wondering is if you consider that an experiment or not.
I consider it a measurement.
Okay, so it's a measurement. Is it a first order or second order measurement?
First.
It's a first order measurement.
Yep.
So walk me through the difference between a first order and a second order measurement, please.
So a second order measure or a first order measurement is when the thing that you introduce has a directly proportional relationship to the measurement. In the example of SAGNAC, for example, when you're measuring light, the exact rotation of the table produces the fringe pattern. So that's a first order effect, velocity, and then the measurement of the corresponding fringe that's directly proportional to the velocity is a first order measurement. Second order measurement.
Directly proportional. That's interesting because to my mind, it seems like there's some adjustments that need to be done in calculations by your own admission. You mentioned velocity of GPS satellites, right? Can you prove that? What do you mean by directly proportional? What do you mean by directly proportional in your definition of first order effect?
Are you for real? Is that a real question?
Yeah, that's a real question. Yeah, just walk me through it. Because I need to know that's not clear as a.
I gave you an example of how velocity would cause a variance.
About it. I'm just trying to clarify your.
I already clarified it in my original answer.
Well, is it linear or non-linear? Does that make a difference?
What does proportional mean?
Your first order is more qualitative. Second order is more quantitative, right? You get precise and you have measurements and tools using external stuff, right? So let's just get past it. What's your actual point, Mortal One?
My actual point was, so we've conceded now that this isn't an experiment. It's a measurement.
You said it was a measurement from the first. Who conceded what?
We're on the same page. This is not an experiment.
That's a different way to say the same thing. Sure.
Do you believe that the scientific method doesn't require an experiment?
It does.
All right. So we're getting a little off. We're getting a little off into dog shit.
I think this is important.
Okay, go ahead. Continue.
So I just want to understand and the reason for this is I have a definition of the scientific method from your website and your epistemology of science. And according to your scientific method as recorded on your website, I'm sorry, I don't have the exact link, but I can provide it to you. You come from a framework of realism, an objective world exists outside the mind. That's great. Scientific method, and specifically mentioning an experiment. So there's no experiment that has measured the one-way speed of light, is there?
Well, there was the resonance cavity experiment done in 2019. where they said that they, measured the isotropy of the speed of light, but the things that they accounted for to get the measurement for C to equal C, they accounted for sidereal effects in seasonal effects, i.e. the things that Miller found when he measured the periodicity relative to the position of the sun and the stars throughout the year.
But this is another measurement. This isn't another experiment, is it? What's the independent variable?
Not sure. I have to go look at that one again. I just know they used a resonant cavity to make their measurement.
Yeah, but I mean,
they're just projecting it outward.
You would agree, right? That
okay. So okay. You want to get to experiments? Then let's go over all interferometry. Okay. The
okay, but before we get there, I just want to
stop. No. The independent variable is the.
Okay, just chill. It's cool.
Good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, let's not spiral, guys. Let's not
So
spiral.
the independent variables are the direction of the device and the measurements taken throughout the day. If your hypothesis is that throughout the day you'll be aligned with certain directions of motion, that you'll be able to measure those. That's why you move this back.
So is time of day something that can be manipulated?
No.
So then
the direction.
What? Time of day can't be manipulated?
Well, in conjunction with the orientation of the device, it is.
In conjunction with the orientation of the device, you can adjust your time of day. Explain that to me.
Yeah. So when the device is orientated north-south, right, at a specific time of day, you'll turn it in a circle, and the measurements will differ as you turn it.
Okay. So you're saying now that there's a time of day that I can't manipulate, and that's sort of like a shadow variable, and there's a direction of device that you're saying I can manipulate. Is the direction of the device relative to an absolute lab frame, and how would that be determined based on latitude?
The device is on Earth, so it's in the absolute lab frame. And secondarily, when you turn the device, that will show you if the variances corresponded to the time of day and the direction that it's orientated with. Now, the reason, the hypothesis was that, based on the orientation throughout the day in Earth's direction of motion, where it'll be aligned and not aligned with it, it'll get the minimum and maximum reading.
And this definition of lab frame doesn't say anything about it having to be on Earth. Nowhere does it say that. So your lab frame could be on the ISS.
Readings. So you do that by turning the device with respect to the time of day to get the minimum and maximum readings to find out if the time of day is truly affecting the measurements, which is what all interferometry experiments did at that time.
Earth's direction of motion? Did you just mention that?
Didn't you say in your opener that you guys adopted the ether cosmology, like the ether framework, and that actually you said that there was a measurement of ether wind speed and that it did vary at the same latitude and altitude? Was that not in your opener?
No,
We didn't talk about wind speed.
Let me answer that question. That's a great question, Shane. Thank you. Would you like me to pull up the paper related that explains Dayton Miller within the context of the quadratic Sagnac effect, that describes why it's not an etheric wind? Or we can talk about. Yeah, absolutely. So you're aware, correct, that there's something called the international gravity formula? Could you describe the two terms of that formula?
No, I don't know what that is.
Okay, great. So the international gravity formula describes the relationship of the gravitational potential as measured by and its effect on local g. There are two terms. There's a potential term related to the oblateness of the Earth, and then there is a second term related to the rotation of the Earth. So basically, all the quadratic Sagnac effect is saying is, in the same way of all interferometry, we make a measurement of the effect on the device within that frame from those two effects. So that creates what's called a quadratic effect, and all that really is just saying is it's a perfectly consistent relativistic explanation of Dayton Miller. So there's no concession of ether wind. I want to get to the ether wind topic though. So you mentioned that there's an absolute frame. So the Earth itself is an absolute frame, correct? The entire Earth.
I'm not going to keep answering the same question over and
Bro,
over
we
again.
explained it.
Okay, so yes, that's the case.
That's what I got.
Okay, so would there be any isotropy in the measurement of the one-way speed of light as a function of your location on the Earth?
Only in the north-south direction
In the north-south direction. How do you measure that direction?
with GPS.
So you're reifying your model by using GPS to put in second-order calculations to inform something that's not an experiment. Okay.
How are
got
we
it.
reifying the
right,
opposite
later,
model when
Lisa.
we're using experiment tools
See-
and measurements?
I would like
See you later, Lisa.
to show
You
that.
you haven't provided
Not
any.
what the word means, dude.
Could I, maybe we can reset this. Maybe you can get back to the sea lion, because there was a statement made earlier by Alan, I believe, that there are all these questions about the measurement of the velocity of light, and therefore this whole thing about rotating the ether and time dilation and length contraction are just made up because we don't measure that thing. Well, I would like to go back to what I presented earlier and show a measurement, and this has been done many times but by many people. Here's a measurement, and here are some of the values. I'm going to highlight them on the screen for the audience that are being measured. Okay, you guys can see, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the measured velocity of a muon. Muon is not light. Muon has mass. It's a particle. It's well studied in laboratory settings. We know its mass, and we can measure its velocity when it comes from the atmosphere at high speed, 0.98 of c, not c, just shy of c. We can measure it. We can measure the momentum. Momentum is mass times velocity. We know the mass from other measurements. We certainly know the distance, 10 kilometers. That's easily measured. And we count the number of muons over here and over here. So that's a measure. And now the math simply does not add up. And we also know the half-life of a muon. Very well studied. The math half-life basically means the particle will disappear after a certain amount of time. So we know that this math does not add up if this was an absolute reference frame. There is no way this many muons can cover 10 kilometers in the amount of time that they can be alive. We perform measurements of these things, we add them up, and there is no way. We know, however, when we look at it through the lens of rotating the ether, that time dilation and length contraction perfectly explain this empirically observable and measurable phenomenon. It is shown here. From the point of view of the Earth, there's time dilation occurring when we look at muons. Their clocks seem to be running slower. When we think about it from the position of muon, it's the distance between the two positions that is shortening. These are empirical measurements. And I want to...
You don't know
I'm about to fall asleep.
where it started at. You're just
Yes,
making
we
a
do.
measurement. And you're just making a measurement in the sky, and you're like, oh, it would have actually had to start it up here even further, but
No,
because
no,
of
no.
link contraction and time dilation, we measure it here, dude.
That's not what happens. We
Okay.
know where they show up. We have measurements of
Okay.
that.
All right, your position's noted. All right.
Okay, now present your position. Present that this is not true. Present empirical evidence. Stop hand waving mythical
Well,
ether.
look,
Show us empirical ether.
That depends on time dilation being a factor, because even when you're looking at it, right, you're depending that muons are up in the upper atmosphere, Lorentz contracting away, and that you have a time dilation effect before it hits the ground. And that's what makes your empiricism make sense. But really, it's just oscillation. You're just decaying a cesium atom, maintaining that oscillation rate consistently. That's all it is. Go ahead, Alan.
Where's the cesium atom here? Where's the cesium atom in this experiment?
You're talking about time dilation, right? So you're assuming that that's happening in full propensity and correctness
In
for
this
your measurements to
particular
make sense.
experiment, I'm not measuring time. I'm not employing atomic
For a
clocks here.
muon to be a measurement, to take a register, right? For it to register, you're assuming that it's from somewhere and that in the atmosphere, it's actually Lorentz contracted, right?
Here, right here, when it says
Right?
muon flux, that's measured.
No,
The flux
you
is
don't.
measured.
you don't know where muon detection comes from. You're just gonna just measure it and say that actually it's
Well, why
based on
don't you-
empiricism.
Why don't you explain it to us, Shane? Where does muon detection come from? How are muons detected, and what do you think they are?
Listen, when you're going to take a measurement of muons, right, from muons, radioactive particles from cosmic rays, right, in the distance, you're taking it from this part, right, in the atmosphere where the muon is at rest. But actually, the atmosphere is Lorentz contracting. You have a time dilated effect for it to be measured. And from that, you're assuming all this nonsense about cesium atoms, which is decaying at a constant rate, right? And it has, wait, what's the rate, Alan?
The
I mean, I don't
half-life.
see how that's relevant. What do you? So there's two things that I'd like to pull on there. So you make a mention of cosmic rays, and I did actually read your website description about this. So I'm wondering what your explanation for this phenomena is in relation to cosmic rays, and in particular, are cosmic rays inside or outside of the absolute lab frame?
Do we know cosmic rays definitely produce muons that are detected on Earth for certainty?
We don't need to. Not for this argument.
That's the hypothesis.
Specificity. Everybody drink.
Of the mainstream narrative.
No, we know where the muons show up in our atmosphere. We don't need to discuss how exactly they come to show up. They just show up.
You just know they're there.
If you don't discuss where they came.
What the fuck is it? Can the Globers explain the method used in Ares success? It wasn't Ares success, it was Ares failure. What a fucking idiot.
Came from, then how, dude?
Because it's not relevant to this conversation. We know they show up there, and that's it.
But you're saying they only show up there, right? Because of link contraction and time dilation.
Not only.
That's actually a mischaracterization. They don't show up there because of time dilation and length contraction. But the reason that so many of them make it down to the surface, and Shane also misstated this, the atmosphere is not length contracting. It is within the frame of the muon itself that we're observing these effects. And Shane, I would like to pull on that because you seem to think that we don't understand how these are measured. So how would you measure this phenomena? And would you do it within an absolute frame or a relative frame?
Well, my position doesn't need made-up particles to make things that aren't in motion.
How are these made-up particles?
Right? So we don't need made-up particles, dude. To defend a muon is retarded in the first place. You know why? Their whole purpose is to keep the framework of relativity in place. It's
muons have nothing to do with relativity. They have nothing to do.
It's one of like seven different discoveries that they had to stack on.
I'm sorry, Strawmanning. This is absolute misrepresentation of our position. Muons have nothing to do with relativity. Muons are studied through the standard model of particle physics, which is completely detached from general theory of relativity at the moment in physics. Muons are subatomic particles that are well understood, same way we understand electrons, same way we understand protons and neutrons. They're well understood in complete isolation of this experiment. That's how we know their half-life. That's how we know their mass. We observe them. We can create them ourselves. We observe them being created at a certain altitude or range of altitudes. We know this. We didn't make that up.
Such a dick
and
shit.
then we ask ourselves a question. How come a certain measured amount of them make it to the Earth? It is counterintuitive. They should not all make it in that amount to the Earth because statistically speaking, they should all disappear on their way there. This shows you length contraction from the perspective of the muon and time dilation from the perspective of the stationary observer in relation to the muon.
Who is the
only if you stop for a second. Only if you assume that the muon was created at the upper atmosphere and then it ended up all the way down here. You don't know where the one that you measured down here is at. Just because you make anomalous measurements doesn't mean you can just start link contracting and time dilating to reaffirm your model. Now, you measure
this
them
is evidence for my model. This is evidence for my model because there is no other known explanation at the moment.
When you address the creation and tracking it, right? That's where you're just asserting it.
I just addressed it to you.
That's why you're stop interrupting me. That's why you said, "Oh, I don't want to discuss that. We know they're up here, blah blah blah." Right? But you don't even know why they're what's the cause of what they what produces them anyways.
Because we're not discussing the standard model.
Do me a favor. Can we, when the other guy's talking, let's mute up. That's kind of the point where I shouldn't be over talking each other. And I let it go for as long as I can, but just make sure that you are only talking when it's your turn. Okay, thank you. So go ahead. I'll let you, Alan. Go ahead, speak from now. If you guys can mute, that'd be great.
Thank you.
So if you have a hold on, if you have a problem with something that he says, you don't agree, just remember it so that when it's your turn, you can point out that it was fallacious or a straw man, whatever you need to point out. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Just because you measure muons on the Earth doesn't mean they came from the upper atmosphere. They have a half-life of microsecond, right? Fractions of a second. You don't know where they were. You don't know where they originated at. To assert that it came from the atmosphere due to link contraction and time dilation is
You don't know.
It's just your assertion. Okay. Now, that's all I have to say on that. Now go ahead and make your counterpoint to that, and then we're gonna move on.
It's dependent, by the way.
Thank
Muons
you.
are the example of a time delay. That's why it's important.
They're
to know
not an
about whatever.
example of anything. So
Right,
let me address a
experimental
few
evidence
things.
of it.
Well,
Okay.
Shane,
Okay, go ahead.
Let me address a few things. First of all, the reason why I'm refusing to discuss how muons are created is because today we're not discussing the standard model of particle physics. We're discussing general relativity. Second of all, the reason why we know where they come from is because we probe different places looking for muons. If we go too high up, they're not there. If we go to a certain altitude, there's a lot of them. If we go a little bit lower, there's fewer of them. And guess what? They're coming from above us. They're not coming from random directions. They're shooting down at us. We measure lower, we measure lower, we measure at the ground. So unless you're postulating that muons are manifesting themselves magically in random locations, and there's no causal effect of them being produced somewhere and traveling in a given direction with a certain velocity, unless you postulate that there's some fluctuations of some mysterious field, is that the argument you're making? You would have to show that.
Yeah, that's my argument.
Okay, the default logical position is they show up, they travel in a direction, and they decay on their way down. And then there's a question, how come they're not decaying enough? And when you introduce the concept of rotating ether, my friend, then you get the answer to that. This is empirical evidence for the fact that there's time dilation and length contraction occurring due to relative velocity. And I won't even pick on the fact that you guys mentioned several times that it's one of the observers that's contracting, because that's hilarious.
All right, so we're actually going to touch on that specifically now. All right, so we're moving on from muons. My position was already stated before, so we're good to go. Now, we're going to talk about relativity of simultaneity. Suppose you have a moving train car at a velocity v full of passengers, and there's a bomb at the center of the train car. Bomb is configured in such a way that it'll detonate when it receives a simultaneous lightning strike at the front and the back of the train car. With respect to the train car, there's a stationary observer on a platform. At the exact moment that the bomb-carrying train car intersects with the stationary observer, lightning strikes the front and back of the train with the stationary observer. Does the bomb detonate, or is there a temporal divergence due to link contraction and time dilation as a function of the square of the velocity of the train over c? And are the passengers saved? What say you, sir?
Well, I think we need to get a little bit closer on some of those definitions there. Like, because we need to think about it. I think the distinction is going to be whether there's a relative frame or an absolute frame, correct? Do you agree that if we assume a relative frame with a constant speed of light, then it would follow that simultaneity is relative?
What was your question?
If we assume a constant speed of light in all reference frames and the principle of relativity within those frames, it would be the case that simultaneity would have to be have to occur in relative fashion. So my question to you is, doesn't your understanding of this example for us hinge on whether or not there exists an absolute lab frame on Earth, and where would it exist relative to that moving train?
Would the bomb detonate, yes or no?
Well, I think we need to define the terms a little bit better.
Answer the question.
So if
define the terms and answer the question. They're your terms to define. You're the relativist.
That's what we're trying to do. So our position is in accordance with relativity, right? So
what does relativity say?
I have the answer on the screen, if I may, Sea Lion. What is shown here, and there's a GIF, so bear with me because it's animated, but that's a good thing. From a position, let's say A and B denote three independent events, three bombs exploding. From the point of view of a stationary observer, V0, all three happen at the same time. You can see it right now. All of them are happening at the same time. An observer who's moving with a speed 0.3 sees, wait for it, C occur first, then B, then A. And this observer, the opposite. This is
So
what
your
we claim.
argument, your argument is that the train would not blow up due to the velocity of the train.
I couldn't follow your description because you were speaking so fast that you lost me after the first two sentences.
Do it again.
Do you have a picture? Can you provide some kind of picture that you can walk us
Yeah.
through
The
step
point
by
is,
step, like
Yeah,
the way I
yeah,
walked you through the muon measurement?
Go to Google and type relativity train.
Yeah.
Is there any way you can describe that to me using colorful puppets of some
No,
sort?
I'm not going to Google. I want you to walk us through it.
Got you.
The point is, no amount of relativity makes that bomb not explode. That's the correct answer.
Yeah, that's
As
the
you can
correct
see,
answer,
all,
really.
all three events occur. We're not
No,
saying
no matter where
the
you're looking at it
occurrence of an
from,
event
it
is
goes
relative.
boom, Peter. No matter where you're looking at it from, doesn't matter.
That
no
is
matter
true.
where you're.
That is true.
Okay, so then there is an absolute frame.
No,
Ta-da.
all events occur. The three independent events, A, B, and C, occur in all frames of reference.
Then there's an absolute lab frame. Then
No, clearly there isn't. The coordinates for the moving observer are rotated through the ether.
so your argument is that that the bomb wouldn't detonate because of the velocity of the train.
Again, you have to walk me through your,
that's your
thought
position.
experiment step by step because your speech was incomprehensible to me.
Okay, well you can go back and listen to it then on the playback. Here we're going to
Okay,
read.
I shall do
from
that.
Here we're going to read back from the definition of simultaneity here, where he says, down at the bottom, we shall not here discuss the inexactitude which lurks within the concept of simultaneity for two events at approximately the same location, which can only be removed by abstraction, which is what you're doing right now, because we all know the train would blow up, and which implies that there's an absolute frame for them all to be relative to. And the hypothesis of the ether theory is that all events will occur simultaneously in the ether. Guess where the ether's at? In the lab frame on Earth. Now, for the next part, you were saying.
Hold up a second. Let's pull on that a little bit. So,
what's up?
You say that the
No.
this within an absolute
No.
frame
But
on Earth?
before we move on, both of you guys.
That's important because you just
both
slipped
of you
that in
guys-
there.
before
That's
we
a very
move on-
important point, though. We need to
Stop.
address that.
Okay, just write it
Before
down.
we
Remember
move
that.
on-
Go ahead.
Before we move on, both of you guys agree that the train blows up in all frames and the velocity of the train will not save anyone.
I don't, because I couldn't follow your experiment, your description of the thought experiment. You were speaking too fast.
Okay, how about Sea Lion Prime?
I concur with Peter.
You concur with
My
Peter? All right, bro. We're gonna run it one last time.
Walk us through it. Can you show us a picture? It's very hard to visualize these things purely based on speech.
Well, keep trying to stare at your picture and just think real hard that it won't explode. That's what you could.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be intellectually honest on my account.
It'll be perfectly honest.
Can you stop that share for me, Peter? Thanks.
Suppose you have a moving train car at some velocity full of passengers and there's a bomb at the center of the train car. The bomb is configured in such a way that it detonates if it receives simultaneous lightning strikes at the front and back, similar to the the standard example that they give for the moving train car and the stationary observer at the center. Right? With respect to the train, there's a stationary observer on a platform. At the exact moment the bomb-carrying train intersects with the stationary observer, lightning strikes the front and back of the train car. Okay? Does the bomb detonate, or is there a temporal divergence due to the velocity of the train?
Yes. I am familiar with that. It's a common, puzzle in relativity. And the solution is well known. I don't remember it.
That's a real shame. Sea Lion, you.
So what would this apply? So let's think about this for a second, because
It's impossible to solve it. It's impossible to solve
No.
it this way. You have to draw geometrically
No.
all the relationships. And it's actually given to students in universities to solve this particular conundrum. There's a very well-known solution. This is a debate tactic to throw at you something that it's complex, that has to be drawn and calculated using angles and lengths. And now it's presented in a verbal form, and it's impossible to explain it correctly unless you just did it on a piece of paper and just are reading off your notes. So this is a trap.
Didn't we make up the train bomb example, dude?
It's a basic question, and it even says here in Einstein's 1905 paper, we shall not here to discuss the inexactitude that lurks with the concept of simultaneity for two events at approximately the same place, which can only be removed by abstraction, right?
It's very hard to think about these things because they're counterintuitive.
No, you guys all agreed that at one point that the bomb would go off, and then you stopped when you realized the implication of an absolute frame.
You're on the lab frame,
relativity.
And then now you're appealing to an equation that doesn't exist. And I'm not even going to pick on you and tell you to. And I'm not even going to pick on you and tell you to pull it up and show me right now. So I don't give a shit. I know the bomb blows up and
They're
all
spiraling. So in special relativity, there's no such thing as violation of causality. And there's no such thing as events occurring or not occurring depending on the observer. This is very well known. And all the paradoxes in relativity that are given as thought experiments for people to calculate and compute, that this is done every day in every university on Earth, have a known solution within the special relativity.
What's the solution for the muon paradox?
Gotcha. Okay.
I just provided it to you.
Yeah, we just talked about it. So
let me ask you this: Would you board the train then? Would you be on the bomb train and take the risk? No.
No, not without having first thought through the thought experiment. I would.
Yeah, experiment or nothing. I wouldn't want to be on a train that has a bomb on it, whether it'll explode or not.
I would sit down for a few hours. I would think through the thought experiment. I would employ the services of a person who's familiar with these problems to help with my poor knowledge of geometry, and I would then answer your question.
Let me ask
would you get on the train?
Let me ask you about the implications of that question, though, because you mentioned
the implications are you die. Would you get on the train or not?
There's two things that are related to that question that get back to this idea of the absolute frame. So thus far in the debate, we have not established a constructive difference between a theory of the ether and a theory of the relativity on the basis of what we established of our definition of ether. The only thing that will distinguish them on the basis of what we've talked about so far is the existence of an absolute frame. Now, there's two components that we need to talk about with relation to this supposed absolute frame. The first one is we've identified that unless you have another piece of evidence you want to discuss, your only piece of evidence for a one-way speed of light calculated within this absolute frame of reference was from GPS, which by itself would require calculation of adjustments by your own admittance, so I don't see how that's compatible with an absolute model of an absolute frame. The other question I have for you is, you mentioned that the ether is within that frame. Can you expand on that piece specifically? You said the ether is within the absolute frame.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a translation of motion that comes from the sky that follows sidereal time. This is measured with interferometry. As you increase in altitude, you measure a faster velocity, right? So in the same, what according to what? What do you mean?
What experiment has measured that?
Oh, Yuri Galev, Dayton Miller, and Picard.
Yeah, but I already provided you.
What was
I provided you with an alternative explanation for the Dayton Miller experiment.
Oh, yeah. So your alternative explanation is invalid. The Sagnac effect has no relativistic derivation.
That's completely false statement. Would you like me to provide you? Would you like me to provide you with multiple statements to show that that's an incorrect statement?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let me go ahead. I have some sources right here. Let me pull that up for you. So there's the original derivation, and then there is, so you're familiar with the history of the Sagnac effect and its interpretation in relativity, right?
Are you sharing? We don't see anything.
I'm about to share now. Okay. Sorry.
Who is Yuri Galev?
Dude with an interferometer.
That's the guy that bent spoons, isn't it?
So here's a paper right here. The Sagnac effect and its interpretation by Paul Langevin. Langevin, sorry.
Yes.
Okay, so what is your criticism of the derivation in this paper?
Let's see. So relativity theory doesn't predict a fringe. That's my criticism. You hold on one second. Yes, you can't predict a fringe pattern without invoking a preferred frame at the center of the device. relativity
Can you
theory.
show that to be the case with any sort of paper or result? How are you measuring that? What do you define as a fringe?
That's how Paul Langevin derived it, right? You invoke a geometrically convenient position at the center of the device for the motion to be relative to it.
In the derivation, walk me through where that happens. Because that's an affirmative claim. Now you're saying that this is an invalid representation of the phenomena, and I can pull up a large number, if my computer will cooperate with me. I have a large number of papers here. So
a large number.
Yeah, I mean, I'm learning from the best. You guys have good papers, so I got to keep up. You know what I mean?
Dude, how come every question is you ask us 6 more questions and don't answer any of our questions? How come we have to answer all your scattergun bullshit?
It's fine. Because you're making a strong affirmative claim on this absolute reference frame, and thus far.
So listen. I got you. Here we go. So this is the Dufour and Prunet Sagnac experiment that they did, right?
Yeah. Let's take a look.
This is their configuration they had here. Okay.
Oh, you're showing your screen. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to explain the. Oh, yeah, it should be sharing, right? Okay. Now, here's Paul Langevin trying to explain it through using general relativity. Right?
I don't see it. I just see
I
you
don't think you're
scroll
sharing.
some stuff on. Yeah.
Yeah. I got to stop my screen share thing.
Yeah, watch my webcam.
You already have it. Yeah. Okay.
We can do that too.
Okay. Okay. So this is their apparatus. They had
But
a
I
spinning
cannot
table.
resolve anything in that small thing. You need to show it.
Click
fully.
on it.
Click on it and make me the center.
Yeah, I put it on
okay.
the screen.
Well, it's still just.
I'm just curious. Okay, so let's talk through this. So
Okay. Let me talk for a second then. Instead of you
absolutely.
half talking for me. Okay. So the Sagnac effect here. Right. They had this experiment where they have a rotating table.
All right, later, Martin.
And they have a stationary table on top of it. They're using angled 45-degree mirrors and a source that's stuck to the wall on the lab, and a detector that's stuck to the wall on the lab. The source emits light, hits the prisms, gets split through the beams, and then it hits the rotating frame, and then it ends up back at the wall in the lab. Right now, relativity tried to explain this experiment, specifically Paul Langevin, and he comes in to say. After making the wrong prediction, right? He says, the relativistic theory thus seems to be in complete dissension with the classical theory and also with the results provided by experiment. But given that Paul Langevin appeared to allow the value to be reportedly higher, we considered that the center where the theoretical relativist must be presumably placed at the must be arbitrarily selected. And the relativistic theory found this contrary to the agreement with the classical experiment. This experiment, if the center is obligatory collinear with the center axis of rotation of the disk, this only point on the disk, which it can be a permanent origin of Galilean axis, not subjected to rotational moment. This is despite the explanation Mr. Langevin said to us when he arrived after being informed of the results of our experiment. So Paul Langevin was saying that he could derive this, no problem as a relativistic effect, and he could only do it invoking a preferred frame at the central axis. When you set up for a Lorentz transformation, here we go with, let's see, what was his name? Tartaglia. Tartaglia does the exact same thing to try and address the Sagnac effect. There is no frame that predicts the amount of fringes in relativity theory, unless you invoke a preferred frame. One second, where's mine? What am I looking for? Tartaglia. 1 second. Here we go, Tartaglia. So what they do is they set up for a geometrically convenient position here, right? Oops, the frame's a little messed up, or the picture's a little oversized, but you guys get the gist of it. The world line is noted here in the center axis of the rotating device for the fictitious frame, and then the deviation here is the rotation for an observer at the rim of the device. This is how the relativist explains the Sagnac effect, right? By invoking a geometrically convenient position, always. This can't be answered with the Sagnac equation, or like it can be with the Sagnac equation. You have to invoke a preferred frame. Now, when you get into the derivations for the Sagnac effect as a relativist, you will find. Second, nope. We're getting close. You feel it?
I do.
All right, 1 second. Right here.
Are you guys
Here's
twins?
So here's relativity, right? Assuming a constancy of the speed of light for the two observers, right? So we have a source and a recorder on a platform that's rotating, right? You agree? The Sagnac effect,
Hey, Dan.
classic Sagnac apparatus setup.
Yeah.
Observer recorder on a platform that's rotating. Okay. Uniformly rotating, relativity predicts that they're an inertial frame, so C will be measured as C for both of those people, right? So if you math that out, what you're going to get is C going clockwise and C going counterclockwise will be the same speed, which will produce no fringe shift pattern. There's no way to explain this without invoking the geometrically convenient position and doing a Lorentz transformation. That was shown by Tartaglia here.
Sorry, go ahead. My bad.
Tartaglia, that guy owes me $25.
Sorry, this was shown by Tartaglia here, where you can only explain the Sagnac through geometrically convenient positions. Now earlier we were talking about Michelson, Gale, Pearson, and whatnot, right? So we have.
Hold on, let's before we go there though. Before we go there, I think there's support. What do you mean by geometrically convenient?
At the center of the device where it's stationary and non-rotating.
Okay, but what is the issue with that?
It's a preferred frame, and relativity can't derive a solution without invoking it, because relativity predicts that. So let's assume that link contraction and time dilation would apply to the apparatus. The fringe shift pattern that relativity would predict would be much smaller than the one that's measured, right? Because the velocity is a one-to-one relationship, whereas relativity predicts that the fringe shift would be the square of the velocity over c squared, which would be much smaller than what's predicted.
Can you show that? Can you show that derivation specifically?
Yeah, that's link contraction and time dilation, right? Okay. That's the square of the function of the velocity.
So what's the discrepancy?
Yeah. So I'm still not understanding how this creates a preferred frame.
The discrepancy is relativity predicts a much smaller fringe, and it can't do it.
Right? It can't do it.
But that's just a statement you're making.
No, it's actually shown here in Tartaglia's paper with the geometrically convenient position that he had to invoke to try and explain it. And then he had to do the same thing for Ruyang Wang's experiment, right? He had to invoke a geometrically convenient position in the center of that as well. Like you guys want to see some geometrically convenient positions real quick? Check this out.
Not necessarily.
Linearize it, generalize it.
Where's our boy? So this is Barada, 2022, trying to explain the Ruyang Wang and the Sagnac effect as a relativist. And here we're going to look at, he's going through a thought experiment. He's breaking it down, realizes that even with the gamma factor, there's no ability to explain it. And he goes on to say, though mathematically it is fine, but the physical understanding of the effect from the standpoint of an observer attending the rotation remains difficult. Why is that? Because relativity predicts no fringe shift pattern. We have Post in, Post in, 1967? Right, we're going to read a comment from Post. 1967, to be consistent with the principles of relativity, one has to demand that the Sagnac interferometer ring laser cannot lead to a fringe shift or a beat frequency if the equipment is in uniform translational motion. And then obviously this is a direct contradiction. Now, Einstein says that his equations apply in a curve where it's uniformly, or any polygonal circuit that's in uniform rotation. So if you continuously do a curve, that's a circle, and if it's in uniform translatory rotation motion, then his equations should apply, and the fringe shift pattern would either be no fringe shift pattern, or it would be much less than the velocity of the fringe shift pattern.
When is the latest paper that you're citing on this topic as it relates?
2022.
Okay, perfect. So I have here another paper that seems to contradict what you're saying, and I'm not understanding the source of the contradiction. So this paper presents a relativistic explanation based purely on special relativity that describes the fringe shift that you're talking about. So is this then required? So there are two things tied up in this. I think you said that there's a preferred reference frame set by a geometrically convenient position. But I also know of another paper where they have a sort of more general approach to the Sagnac effect, where there's basically a difference in the way that the loop is centered, and they're still able to define the effect relativistically. So I'm not sure that is required for this.
It's absolutely required.
Well, why is it required?
If the speed of light is constant and you're in uniform motion, you measure c as c, and you measure it because of link contraction and time dilation in the moving frame. So if you're in a uniform transitory motion, relativity predicts that c will be c, and if c is c, then it's going to complete the circuit at the speed, and there's going to be no fringe shift pattern. It's going to combine at the same time, but there's not.
But this paper is directly contradicting what you're saying. So, I mean, obviously, I'm putting you on the spot to speculate on this. We could read this paper more in detail at a later time. I just don't know that this is an accurate statement of how special relativity approaches this problem. And then, I kind of going back to this, the implication of this would be what? A non-constant speed of light in an absolute reference frame or a preferred reference frame? What would be the implication of what you're saying about the Sagnac effect? Because I dispute based on just the papers that I've read, and I'm citing one in particular right here, that what you're saying is not correct.
The implication is that all velocity
Nice, Steve.
is measured with respect to the ether.
Okay, and the ether, you said, is within your absolute lab frame.
Yep.
So, okay, let's dig into that. But there's also an ether wind.
Well, let's stick with the Sagnac and the derivation.
Yeah,
right?
but I'm trying to understand the Sagnac effect in relation to the ether, because that's the distinction.
You're explaining it with the rotation, right? That's what this paper is saying, and that you're ignoring the linearization and generalization aspect of it completely. Is that where we're at?
No, and that's not what I'm saying. So when it comes to the Ruoying Yang and the linearization, that's an attempt to apply a different interpretation. But I can also show you a paper that suggests it's an attempt to apply a different interpretation to the Sagnac effect, one that has never been empirically demonstrated.
He did it 3 times. He did it 3 times.
So let's. I have a direct paper that speaks.
Both Alan and Shane are dumb motherfuckers who think they're smart people, and they think they're smarter than all the scientists ever, and they think that whatever bullshit that comes into their head is more valid than everything. So and they're pretty cocky too, pretty smug. It's pretty funny.
Speaks to. I have it right here. I have a paper that speaks to specifically the issues. This is.
It's not a rotational effect, so using a rotational frame to describe it is kind of silly, right? Is that
your argument?
It
is a rotational effect, as a matter.
Of course not. That's what Ruoying Wang proved in 2001.
No, he didn't actually prove it. So when you look at the actual derivation here, and this is also kind of strange because you seem to have imposed this arbitrary standard on us that we can't use certain forms of mathematics. But now what you're saying is, well, this person did a certain transformation and seemed to suggest that rotation could become linear. And what I'm telling you is that this paper right here, which I have a copy of, I can certainly send to you, and this is from Spavieri et al. It basically goes through, and I have the DOI, I can send you the citation. It essentially shows that Ruoying Wang essentially was just basically doing what you accused us of, which was some sort of mathematical trickery. And that's supported by the fact, no, that is correct. And it's supported by the fact that there's never been, would you agree that there has never been demonstrated a device based on the linear Sagnac effect to measure linear motion in that way?
He has a patent for it, doesn't he, Alan? But anyway, that's not
what I asked you. That's not what I asked you. There's plenty of patents out there that don't lead to
you said that it's not a rotational effect. It absolutely is, and it was linearized, meaning that the travel time difference is proportional to the area enclosed by the path of the angular velocity of the rotation, right? Well, hold on, dude, right? Hold on. You've been talking an awful lot, right? What are you getting scared for? It's all right. So, like, when you're saying that it's not a rotational effect, and then we're saying that it actually is observed in a linear system.
Can you mute your mic while he's talking?
Yeah, just mute, please.
Sorry,
we're saying that it is observed in a linear system. That's what Ruoying Wang proved with his paper. That's what the mathematical formula is derived from, right? It can be, by the fact that it can be derived, negates your position. By assuming that light travels in relation to a fixed laboratory frame, that is the whole point. Without that, they wouldn't be able to do this. This is, in fact, the direct contradiction to your supposed paper explaining the Sagnac effect with yet another rotational system. What do you think, Alan?
Here's the problem, though. Here's the problem with that, because I can provide another paper which specifically critiques the methodology of Wang and proves that all he did was reset the coordinate system in a way that made it look linear, and that's supported empirically by the fact that there has been
I'm blocked.
no device ever produced.
Okay.
Notwithstanding,
I'm blocked on his channel. How about that?
Do you understand how revolutionary this technology would be if what you're saying is true?
What was the shape of his interferometer?
Hey, Sea Lion.
Right here.
What did it look like?
We're still within our time, right?
Come on, Peter. What did it look like?
You both have about 15 minutes left.
Okay. I have an idea how to get us out of this conversation. I'm worried.
Who, Alan and Shane? No, they aren't. They're peer reviewed by other lunatics.
That the audience might be asleep at this point. The Sagnac effect is, it is my favorite topic, but may not be everybody's favorite topic. So what I would like to say is this. We all agree that the human intuition is that there should be an absolute reference frame. We have presented a case that through empirical study of nature, people have arrived at the conclusion that an absolute reference frame does not exist. And when you look at the Sagnac effect, and you look at the explanations that are supportive of special relativity, they consistently explain that effect. It is a difficult effect, and it's to explain, and it's normal that many people are confused by it. I'm sure our audience is. If you've ever took a course on relativity, they threw at you different mind-bending problems to solve. And when I did that, I often got them wrong. But when someone told me where I got them wrong, it became obvious to me why they were correct and I was wrong, because I could think through them with their help. What you're showing, Alan, is a number of papers by other people who are trying to wrap their heads around the Sagnac effect, and they took a specific position and they thought it broke special relativity. What Sea Lion is showing is another set of papers that are completely consistent, provide consistent explanation with special relativity. Trust me, the four of us are not going to solve this here because these are difficult problems. But what you're presenting as some kind of conclusive evidence that special relativity is broken is countered by Sea Lion's equally valid evidence that they're not. And I would wager that those have more support in the physics community than yours. I would still like to know who Yuri Goliath is.
And the other question... Sorry, go ahead.
You're good. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I think the other thing that we need to focus on that's really specific here is that we have not been able to narrow down if there exists an absolute reference frame. Your claim has been that we can therefore measure the one-way speed of light, and you claim that we did it with GPS, and that's clearly not within the context of an experiment. So do you have another experiment that suggests the measurement within an absolute lab frame of a one-way speed of light?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. Do you see why that's a problem?
No.
Okay.
You see why it's a problem that relativity theory can't predict a fringe shift pattern without invoking an absolute frame? You understand that? Do you understand that why neither?
He just showed you that it can.
Stop. Not without a geometrically convenient position, dude. You want to see what relativity predicts for two observers in uniform transitory motion? It predicts no fringe.
Okay, when I read that guy,
guys, can you just let him finish? He's letting you guys talk.
When I read that guy's paper, I'll find the geometrically convenient position for the transformation that's in there. Okay, because relativity doesn't predict a fringe shift pattern. Now, number two. Let's see, where was I at before you interrupted me? The Ruyang Wong's device, you talking about a coordinate system obfuscation or something like that, that's retarded. The fringe shift pattern is derived here based off of the delta. You're right. The delta L is the effective length of the apparatus right here, just the part that's in the motion. So when he did the parallelogram configuration where it's just the top linear portion, that's the only portion that it's measured with. So with respect to what is 4 pi velocity delta L over C lambda, with respect to what is that measurement made to? If it's a linear device.
Well, I dispute that it is actually a linear effect, and the reason that I dispute that is twofold. I have a paper that I see it, but I don't just simply believe a paper on its face. I need to think about it within the proper context. So what you're describing is completely at odds with all other characterizations of the Sagnac effect, and would be so revolutionary as to create an entirely new class of devices. So I find it difficult to believe that this paper is accurately presenting what it's claiming to present, particularly in light of not seeing a physical apparatus, not seeing the full data set, and having another paper right here, which I can provide to you, which breaks down the definitional problems and problems with the way that this experiment was set up that invalidate it. So I'll ask you again, what evidence is there that an effect that would be worthy of a Nobel Prize has ever been implemented outside of this claimed lab frame?
Well, he patented his work, and then right now there's 3 companies that have patents on similar devices. Now there's nothing in production. Now there's nothing available for commercial use or whatever. But let's say that this device did, work as intended, right? He got the equipment on loan from the military, right? And he patented it. This is the second experiment that he did. After the first experiment, he filed for the patents for everything, and then he did this one, right? Now, if they're using this or whatever, it would be, classified because they're using this for military tech.
So an existence of a patent is not empirical evidence for a scientific claim.
You asked if anyone had a device. You said there was a patent.
The answer is no.
agree.
Just say no, and let's move on.
Let me ask another question, though, because it's really important.
How about you answer a question?
Yeah, I've answered plenty of questions. So I think the next thing I wanted to get to, though, that's really important is, again, we have not had a constructive difference between the ether as we've contextualized it. We've provided, nothing but evidence that our conception of ether within the framework of Einstein, and I can provide you with many other papers. So, for example, there's the paper from Jacobson and Mattingly in 2000 that define a fully compatible theory of general relativity based on a dynamical unit time-like vector field, which they call the Aether, which fits all of our definitions and all of the ways that we've contextualized it. So your only distinction of your ether and our ether and which theory should be preferred in this context is the existence of an absolute frame and the ability to measure an etheric wind that explains these interferometer effects. Do you agree that that's true?
No, neither of you agreed to get on the train with a bomb, so there's an absolute frame.
That's not a fair argument.
So let's think about that, though.
Then tell us you would get on the train then. Tell us you'd get on the train then, dog.
Tell us why you won't.
I'm already on the train. I'm on the train already.
I got 2 train tickets. Both of you guys want them?
That's a fun little thought experiment, but it would imply that an absolute frame exists in the real world.
So you're refusing to answer on the ground that I'm going to
Moderator, a direct question was asked.
Yes, I am answering the question.
Thank you.
I am already on this train.
Got you. And then Sea Lion. Dude, you're just going to be sarcastic. You're not going to
join me on the train, Sea Lion. Join me.
No. Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, what we're trying to get to in this thought experiment is the existence of an absolute frame. So
get on the train unless you're afraid.
Your claim that such a frame must exist on the basis of this thought experiment is not demonstrated by any empirical experiment you can provide in which we can do a measurement of the one-way speed of light in an absolute frame.
That's a lot of words for you're afraid of.
I'd like to make a comment to the audience, please. I remember 20 years ago solving that particular puzzle in relativity. I got it wrong. I struggled for hours to understand the correct explanation. I had to go line by line, angles, lines, relationship between all of it, and I understood the solution.
You blow up, bro.
I have since forgotten the solution, and it is not fair to ask difficult puzzles, to present difficult puzzles like this in oral form without presenting them on paper and giving people on the train. I dragged Sea Lion with me against his will onto the train, and now I'm asking you to move on from this point.
All right. I vote we put a poll up to the audience who gets on the train.
So
the isotropy of the speed of light and how it relates to Maxwell's equations, the laws of physics thereof.
Okay. Well, we can use Newton in a bucket if you prefer.
No. Let's just stick on this one topic. So if what you're claiming is true.
Uh-oh. What the hell's going on? Uh-oh. Okay, it's buffering for everybody, so it's not just me. Yep, true, Cygnus. It's nobody's wanting to be somebody. That's all it is, man. They're nothing. They're nobody. And they know it.
Click. However, Wolf and Pettit noted that the data
So they pretend to be somebody. And they've got, goddamn, 20 more fucking minutes. I'll try and hang in there, but I'm
data
about
set they
falling
analyzed in the
asleep.
velocity component in the line of sight between the satellite and the ground receiver.
Post it. Let's see.
Measured, and then they correct for it.
Well,
And then they correct for the
How
differences.
Yeah, his internet's fucking up. I might just end it here because I don't
Measure.
give it.
Range measurement equation, bro. We went over this from the beginning.
Because I don't give a shit what they have to say. I mean, I'm just completely disinterested in this entire fucking topic. It's dumb people trying to be smart. So, and I'm about to fall asleep. I mean, that's all I can do to keep my eyes open. So, I'm gonna end it here. Thanks for watching, guys. You can go over to Jaren's and check it out if you want. But yeah, I'm gonna go lay down. Thanks for coming, guys. As always, be seeing you.